these I think that these perspectives are important to the drug user expertise, the people that actually have or are engaged in drug use. We have an expertise that is often ignored or left out of these discussions. It is always about how are we protecting people against us. I think drug users need to be at the center of all these discussions. I happen to be a disabled person. I'm from Philadelphia, which is Lenape Hoking land. So we have to understand that this is indigenous land. We're on it. We need to be living in equanimity with them. Also, understanding like that we really don't have that much of a claim to the land that we're on. I identify as agender, but he, him is fine for people. I would say queer person. I don't really identify with gay white culture. I don't. It's something that exists, but just definitely it's just more of a queer person. I'm a bottom. I always say like from a sexual standpoint, but also personality standpoint. I've got a bottomy personality. So and I like that. My race is Black. Definitely think about Black diaspora and survivor of Middle Passage is like part of my identity and it is really important to not assume people's race or gender and any of these spaces as well. So just been trying to like model that with other people, as well as where they're from or what they do. I happen to be a lawyer and I'm a PhD student at Temple University right now in the geography department. So those are some of my background. And I'm a drug user too. So there you go. Again, yeah. So in these discussions, we're always talking about like how do we stop AIDS or HIV spread, and what we found is that new cases are going down. The expansion of PrEP is helping, and those are the outcomes that are actually working, right? Because people, as soon as you become positive, you are you can get access to medication, and that's been really positive for people. I think that we need to understand that things have changed, but that there has to be this other thing in like what are the lives of people. So you can go to the next slide. And that's where we're seeing this idea of chemsex. I'm not a person that wants to I guess sensationalize the idea of chemsex. I would say, I think that people go to these sessions and they want to hear that, oh, chemsex is really spreading and it's like tearing apart our culture. And generally, like chemsex is a thing that is happening within our communities. It is going to different neighborhoods, and the spread of partying and play has been pretty endemic in many like gay / queer neighborhoods in major cities for a time. It is a new experience when we're talking about maybe the 2000s and 2010s, but what this thing is and how it's happening is not leading to the spread of like AIDS or HIV like people want to believe. But what it is doing is actually has these other effects around the ways that people are living and enjoying their life. We need to understand and balance these ideas of chemsex can be a place where people are enjoying themselves, but also it can be a place without the right education or dealing with things like poverty or anything of that sort. It can be a place where harm can happen. So I'm just going to read these terms. Chemsex, term that describes unique gay cultural phenomenon known as party and play culture, or high and horny. Usually it's a combination of methamphetamine, ephedrine, or GHB. It's associated with some recent and dramatic changes that have affected the experience of gay sex and pleasure. And when people say chemsex, they're I mean, I would say they are specifically talking about the gay queer phenomenon. We know that many people methamphetamine to experience pleasure in sex. In terms of it being a cultural phenomenon, I'm referring to in this specifically gay cultural way. In the context of AIDS, generally, it became a thing where it was very hard for people, I would say for myself, I'm going to speak for myself, to think about happiness and pleasure without fear. So it's really important that we think about access to pleasure and where that and how we can use that. It's really important. So I'm going to talk real quick about how I do harm reduction. So we can go to the next slide. So part of harm reduction and like access to pleasure is meeting people online. Generally, these are some of the examples of like some this capital T here on the left one. Capital T is usually just that person wants to party, and that's where you would talk to somebody and then find out what they have, what the prices are. Generally, the real thing is if you're in a neighborhood and you know people, you're able to get relationships with people that you trust, and then go back to that person every time. Generally, with street drugs, I mean, there's danger in talking to people that you don't know. So these are the risks that people often will take. You can go to the next slide. Again, I'm just talking from my perspective. I'm more of I do have knowledge of harm reduction, and I am afraid of syringes, so I don't deal with syringes. I know a lot of people that don't deal with syringes, but in general, you can people smoke, or people booty bump. Booty bumping is the I'm trying not to make it as interesting as possible, but it's like this stuff to me is very boring. It seems very boring to think about. People think that the idea of like taking something and doing some kind of rectal insertion of the drug is so interesting to people. It is interesting, and it is the best way to go about receiving pleasure from meth generally. So so that's where I'm at, and in terms of what I in terms of what I when I do see somebody using people are using a syringe, they are using a syringe for a reason. As I tell people, like usually people start with smoking, and if it doesn't lead to what they want, then they will ramp it up, and it's really hard to get people to understand that fact, that when people are using a certain way, they're often using that way for a reason. You can't just give them a harm reduction information and then tell them that they should smoke. There has to be that person has to decide that that's what they want to do. But go ahead.
A quick question. Okay, so booty bumping is taking substances rectally?
Yeah, it's taking what we call I guess what I usually do is one of the fleet bottles that you would use to clean out for sex. You put it in one of them, and then you dissolve it in water, dissolve meth in water, and then you would get up your. So that is the general thing, and then it is able to go in through the liner of your anal cavity. So and then it creates a really smooth high through that way. Honestly, that's higher than smoking, and people do drugs for reasons. So I guess I want that to be clear. You are like, we were smoking, like I was with a person and we were smoking, and it was like, oh, this is not getting me where I want to be. So we're going to try another one.
Okay.
So
And
it's
yeah,
very important to think about why people are actually using the ways that they're using.
awesome. Thank you for that explanation. You said it and I was like, wait, I just want to make sure I heard that right. But okay, cool, cool, cool. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah. Um, yeah, any other question people usually want to talk about booty bumping, but the um, there is a lot of toxic masculinity. There's lots of hesitancy around your butts generally. So this is something that more of a concern for bottoms. So this is and many people don't like to use the dichotomy between top and bottom, but in general, I have found that that is a real experience. And as a bottom, you're also a higher risk of becoming HIV positive. I mean, I guess I'm HIV positive. I only became HIV positive when I was bottoming. So over the last few years. So it is a thing that bottoms need to be more aware of. I guess we can go to the next one. I just want to show what this looks like. It's a regular bag of some crystals and pretty common. I confuse it. It's really hard to confuse with coke, um, just because that's usually in a powdery form, at least in my. Um, and it's harder to, and it's easier to break up. So, in general, people, um, it's just so regular. I'm just trying to do it from a drug user's perspective. It's very regular to go online and to get a little baggie of something, and it should be about this. This is everybody has their tolerance, but this is, I would say, more than what you should be doing a day. Um, but that's my tolerance. Some people do a few in a day, a few baggies in a day. So, um, please go to the next one. Slide. Um, yeah, I just wanted to show that because that's just like what it can look like. I say for my harm reduction, uh, it starts with understanding that that you need a few days to be awake. You will not be going there. An initial high will happen. Um, Part of my harm reduction is informed by others that I know on the street. I have a really bad habit of sending pictures of myself and making videos, making sex videos and stuff like that. So that is one of the things that I'm like, I have to put this phone down. I send it, um, and that can get you into trouble with all sorts of consent things. So it's just like these are things that you need to be thinking about, and it has honestly. When I really, really, really thought about my like who I was talking to and um, what needed to be done, and like the relationships I was having, it was just like inappropriate. And those are some of the pitfalls that people need to think about, and that has. So oftentimes I'll leave my phone at home when I'm going, and of course that has other things that can go wrong too. Um, but there are certain times when you're going to return home. If you're going to go out, you're going to meet somebody, you go to someone's apartment, but it's like in the neighborhood. It's like okay to leave your phone at home. That's what I say. Drink lots of water. Um, Usually I'm just trying to get through like 2 days, 2 or 3 days. So I try to put myself to sleep on the day that's where I'm going down, and also recognizing that there is a come down, and to not take it too seriously, because on the come down it's usually that happens. And usually stay in my room. Hopefully I don't have anywhere to go or work to do, but it's just about understanding that um, that the thoughts that you're going through your head um, aren't really your feelings. I generally avoid other people that are going through psychosis. Anytime that you're meeting people at that may be on their like fifth day up or something, um, and not. I don't fuck with, I don't know what the rules are on this thing, but I don't fuck with these people because I would encourage I just encourage them to just like um, to slow down a bit because like there's a lot of lack of education around this thing, and you might go to somebody's house and they just might be really whacked out. So it's really important to like communicate with them and tell them it's like, oh no, you got to drink some water, or you go to the bathhouse. Just, oh no, you got to drink some water, or no, you should stay inside, or you got to go home. You got to go home, man. So those are some of the things that, from like a queer standpoint, are necessary for people to do. Some of the best care that I've gotten has been like when I've been ramped up, amped up a little bit, and people, honestly, even at club, people will care for you. People are like they don't wanna. Some people wanna like um, assault you and stuff, but like there are also a lot of great people that are like will just like leave you in a corner and make it in a corner and just not put you. I think one of the things that is important to understand is there are like inherent dangers to a lot of these situations. I'm 36 years old, so like I feel like I've been fucking people in bookstores and bathhouses and been to Europe and done lots of gone to Puerto Vallarta, and done like all sorts, been and been in back alleys and in dark for all my life. So, and that's just the way that I have always been. And I know it's like, I don't know, I guess this is recorded, but I don't know, it's definitely like a way of life that is like different, and we don't get it. But I will. That's why I'm going to like the next slide. I think it is important to understand that, at least for me, like um, for even from a young age, use of substances was about access to pleasure. Um, I, especially recently, as I got into my 30s, I really just had to say, like, if I wanted to bottom, if I wanted to understand, if I wanted to connect with people, which is very hard for me to do. Like I was going to have to use sometimes, and that's what I did. I am visibly black. I'm visibly deformities. I'm visibly a queer person. I don't. I just don't have that many options. I know sometimes um, people have said, "Oh, why are you looking for love on Grinder, or why are you looking for love in this place?" And I at the same time, it's not like they're building a drop-in center where all the Black queer people can live in love or anything. It's not like they're building. It's not like they. It's not like they're. Um, it's not like the spaces that we have are usually bars, and sometimes, and those are the spots where people are also armored up. Usually with their friends, they're armored up. Usually it's a youth culture. I will tell you that like a lot of my time I spent um, was going to bars. You'll meet somebody, and then you could have a great weekend with them. And I would do that. I don't know. I've done that so many times in my life. I can't even count. Especially in San Francisco, you meet many people. So this is a part of when we're thinking about like where places that people access pleasure. Um, um, this is within ChemSex is within the realm of that, and we need to like understand that as practitioners, as lawyers, as community members. So for me, it included just cruising places, glory holes, bookstores. Like this is just an adult bookstore at the top of here. That's by the place where Trump actually did his rally with the Four Seasons little total landscaping Pennsylvania. But I've been to that bookstore, and it's just funny that like that people recognize that was an adult bookstore that people still go to, and I think that from from like if we really want to do like AIDS activism or anything like that, you have to understand that we're people accessing pleasure, and it might be a glory hole, it might be cruising, all these places that people do not talk about and are not, and that are pretty taboo to talk about. And I think at least for me, I'm not like a I'm not a partnered gay that like that will yeah like and I've never seen that as I never had access to that either. So like, yeah, and part of this access to pleasure is understanding the Black experience is also um, you it is it is about these sites, and oftentimes about having one picture of yourself, and then people will judge you on that. I would say that I've had varying degrees of success or or negativity online. I've I grew up in, let's see, I was 18 in 2008, so I was on gay.com and Adam. I don't know if anybody knows those things. Does anybody know that? I don't know if you can put that in the chat. Does anybody know Adam for Adam? That still exists.
It's like I've definitely heard. I remember Adam for Adam, and I was like, I wouldn't say it probably stopped being a thing around like 2013, right as I was
Yeah,
graduating high school. It was like, and that's a wrap. Grindr's here.
yeah, yeah. Adam for Adam was a thing, and they yeah, not lately, right? Yeah, for Adam, like in 2005, it was like very hot to be on Adam for Adam. Um, so, and it was in DC where I was, people, there was a lot of Black men on Adam for Adam, and that was when you were having a lot of, that's how I was introduced to this, because we would go over to chemsex generally. We would go over someone's house, and they were like, "Do you want to smoke with me?" And just like smoke. I don't know what smoking is. Cigarettes. Do they mean marijuana? Do they mean, and then do they mean Tina? Or do they mean crystal? Do they mean crack? So those are all things that are in this like space. I put this within the context of like access to pleasure, because it is often these are the spaces that people have access to pleasure. It's a place that it can be very good, and you can have amazing time. But there are also drugs and alcohol there. There are also people that are extremely racist there. They like when people say I don't like Black men, or I don't like. So it's like it's a regular experience of racism that people have. It's not anybody that has been with one of these understands that it is painful to have somebody that they don't like. Even if they don't, it's there's something about it that everyone has a preference. Nobody has to um, like fuck somebody that they're not attracted to. But it's like important to not like provide these spaces where people are like actively like racist. Um, and Grindr is really doing nothing about it too. So it remains a place that is actually um, quite painful to. And this is like I'm not going to tell you every single website, but it's like Squirt is a great place for like finding places to cruise. BBRT is a place for people bareback and bareback sex usually, and looking for large parties to come. I've gone, I've had large parties and had people in a night and things like that, and it's been fun. It's actually been a little boring, honestly, but it's also been fun. So it's like my experience of it. Um, yeah, this is what I mean. It's where people are. These are general things that people have whites only. Um, being told all sorts of things online about racist things. This is what people don't. I only say this because people don't believe Black men when they say that white men are some of the most racist people they've ever met. They seem to not believe it. I I don't. I guess I don't know. Please understand this, that when some of your experiences in the gay white world are, well, in the gay world or queer world, is that these white men are just so racist towards you. Like that will that affects the way that you engage with white culture. People say, well, that's just Grindr. It's like, well, every time I look to access pleasure, I'm called a nigger, you know. I so I'm not a part of this community. I'm not a part of that. I'm not part of this, whatever this is. I'm not a part of it. So um, I think that, you know, I know people can't control it, but like I'm also not going to be engaged with your community, that does, and unless we're actually talking about fixing that part, then I don't know what to do. I don't know what to do about people, right? Anyway, go ahead. So, you know, and then I did want to like talk about this thing. You know, I think I have a different idea of like what consent and agency are, like what people's humanity is. Consent, you know, to be truthful, becomes really fuzzy when it comes to using drugs or using alcohol or using meth, especially because you're often going past things past limit in which you feel comfortable. Um, um, I found that it I can be uncomfortable with with the place that it took me to, but that I also understood that maybe I was there with some other people, or it was it was that it was okay, that I experienced pleasure and that I don't regret it, and that's where I have come out. Um, I enjoy I enjoy sex. I enjoy bottoming. I enjoy um, all types of men. I enjoy all types of bodies. I enjoy, and that has felt like the most freeing for me. I went through time in AA where I was celibate for 5 years, and I wanted to, and during it, I felt like I wasn't a whole person. I felt like I was some half of a person, and that people were really happy to see me, but they like me as their pet. They like me as this thing that I don't know. It wasn't me, and where I am is like I really enjoyed being sexual. I enjoyed being desired, and that was like a big thing, especially as a disabled person, especially as a Black person in a really racist world. Is important for me to experience that as being a part of human. I think that I probably would have died. I probably would have died if I had not um, found like chemsex, PHP kind of meth world, because it's because I just couldn't go on living like a eunuch that was invisible and only visible when other people thought it convenient for them. So, next slide, please. Uh, okay, and then also the next another thing that there's access to pleasure, but you know, there's also this thing about like access to goods. If you're in these spaces, I'm a little bit older than people, and sometimes it is about access to shelter, is about taking care of your community, giving a lift for some people, um, getting food, giving shelter, having a night in someone's house. These are all things that chemsex can mean for people too. To notice those things when you're talking to people. I'm gonna really feel like I'm gonna try to go through these kind of fast, because I would like people to have time to ask some questions. I'm gonna try to go within like 7-8 minutes. Um, so I think it's important when we're talking about messaging to community. 2016, CDC said that half Black men will be diagnosed with HIV. This is an extremely irresponsible and terrible thing to say to a bunch of people. I know people, I've had experiences where white gay men will tell me that they're harm reduction, not fucking black men, because we all have HIV. So before I even had HIV, people assumed that I had HIV, and this is even before 2016. There's so much stigma against Black gay men that people will tell you that you have HIV before this. I understand as you know, in the Foucault way of like you're disease subject before you even become disease. So it was like it was almost certain that I would become it. I would seroconvert at one time, because I didn't know. I didn't know where you would access to that, because there's so much stigma against my existence. You know, I think we had a direct response to that with Kenyan Pharaoh saying, this, that most importantly, we need to know, to ask Black gay men, Black and bisexual men and transgender men and women what kind of programs and healthcare do they want. We're talked and dictated to, we're disrespected in this. So go forward, please. I think most of the time, like, you don't see this like Black queer person does not, to them, I don't know, we're only our blood-brain barrier, we're only surveillance. I think some of the worst language I've seen is they're only looking at like this HIV prevalence or this Hep C prevalence, um, rather than people as whole people. So there's definitely a need to help be safe, but don't tell me my safety is based on only based on HIV. And that is not good. And this thing where people focus on pleasure centers or want to do that doesn't work either. I think good messaging around this is telling people to slow down, be yourself, safe when you're using, know about yourself in situations where you're going to have like a fun time. This is what actually works with people. I give this example of Speedometer, which is this thing, this magazine that was started in. It has very sexually explicit pictures, and mainly for these gay men. And I think that a lot of people are uncomfortable with it, but it's very natural for at least for my culture to be very in this, understanding that doing community workshops here, it's like, what is pup play, what is hot sex, it's co-produced with the community. You can go to the next slide. They have stories about here where this is the harm reduction messaging that we have, that should have is like, well, how does a person understand that, that C is more able to be spread by blood than HIV can. HIV, well, it can't be spread like once it hits the air, but Hep C can. Those are the technologies of like harm reduction, and thinking about what is consent within a sex party situation. Those are some of the things around. It's like, what if your friend brings you to a sex party? Like, you can't go around like asking people, having like a little HIV kumbaya. That's not the way that it goes. So it's like, you need some information on how you're actually going to do that, or like what are the ways to handle that situation. And we're talking about real situation. We're not talking about like having people like sign things. So this is the sort of messaging that does work, and help people like in their humanity. And I think that I think we see these moral panics. I think there are real bad people in the world. It isn't just one bad gay white man. I'm sure many of you seen the news around Ed Buck, who is the West Hollywood. He was a Democratic donor. He was convicted for killing 2 Black men, Black sex workers. I'm not sure their gender, honestly, but they were sex workers. They were Black. He have a thing for it. He seemed to have a thing for racial race play, which is another thing that is pretty, I would say common in my world, having weird, like I would say weird fetishes that are about power and domination are a thing that is just so common. I think it's important to understand that this can be done safely. It can be done in a kinky fashion without being something that is dangerous. The kink factor here went cause death, and I think it was done unsafely, clearly. And it was also done because of the power dynamic, because of the fact that I don't think he was that rich, but he had more money than people that were unhoused, that were sex workers, that were Black. So thinking about this, but I just want to say, at least in my world, these are very common ideas. And I think that when we're thinking about like, how are we building power? How do we actually stop this? Is about like focusing on, you can change the slide, but focusing on like things like the gender binary, like how are we understanding that men do not have to man up. Men are like beautiful, like all men are are creatures, and I only say men here because it's like people can be binary, non-binary as well, but like mask identified people generally don't have to go towards any or not even some prism. It's really just a constellation of beings, and you can be non-binary, but you can also be identify as a man and also be anything, and that's just say I love you, be vulnerable, and all those things are the things that make up mask identity. So I think that is where we need to be, but that does not involve like criminalizing and the carceral, criminalizing this one white man is doing any other thing that any other white man is doing. I think that, and that's what it's about, breaking the stigma. There's so much internal stigma on people. There's stigma within the broader LGBT community against people that are using chemsex. I'll do any people will fuck with any of the drugs, but like they won't fuck with the tweakers. I think it's something that has to be done. And I think that starts with our own gay community. I hear there's these larger issues too, right? There's like education and training for people, like housing, discrimination, and then also there's no harm reduction training outreach like across the nation for this. There's in small places, Canada, like places in Canada and Europe and San Francisco, but like where is it in my city or North Carolina, right? Go ahead. And then there's the actual criminalized survival, the sex work, the HIV criminalization laws, the drug possession and delivery laws that actually like put people in carceral state that really just they don't work in terms of like making people's life better. I'm just going to give you one example here. 2019, I'm not going to give the person's name, but we saw the convergence of all these three issues coming together where person who had also been previously evicted, he was performing sex work outside of his house, but also using also had HIV, crystal meth, was also like helping with the work too, because it also sex work can also be cause a lot of I guess the need to use something like meth or crack to engage in sex work is also something that has to be done for a lot of people too. For me to generally, I would say for me to have sex, it has to take some substance. It just doesn't work otherwise. So this is a person that needs help and needs some sort of assistance. I'm not going to say help, but it's not a victim. But instead of getting that, you put this HIV criminalization statute that's related to sex work, and then also drug possession with intent to deliver on their record, and it's just another person that has their life, and it's the person in our community. Bucks County is in one is the more conservative white county, like from Philadelphia, in the Philadelphia region. So as we see, it isn't really happening in Philadelphia, but I'm just aware of the way that outside of major cities that people are being criminalized in ways that are just wrong. And I always say, like, when people say, well, what should we do with prevention? From my standpoint, I'm a lawyer, I'm an activist, I'm a housing activist. I'm like, yeah, rent control. Rent control is the way that you do that. You decommodify the housing. That's the way that you would do it. But if people are for nice, great housing, that person wouldn't need to like go to this older white man that had a house for him to be in. He wouldn't be trying to stay over days after days at people's houses trying to find a place to live because they have HIV and substance use and they're using drugs. You wouldn't have that if they had a stable housing situation. But and Medicare for all, of course, is what I say. I mean, especially in southern states, people need access to Medicaid. Here in Pennsylvania, Philadelphia, people, as soon as you seroconvert, there's access to medication. I feel like I got access to medication so fast in Philadelphia, and that's just my experience, and that's been that's because of our active brothers and everybody that ever fought ever. It's all the people in these rooms that fights for these things. So I just want to thank everybody, because people used to die. Very recently, people died of HIV really fast. So, yeah. So, and I just want to just like get us to the, what are some takeaways? I'd say, people need to be comfortable with difference. They need to stop thinking about, they need to make room for the people that are queer, that are fat, that are crippled, that are a little crazy, that are down low. I do not need to hear about people's coming out stories personally. I think that's a fine thing, but like coming out is really just some kind of white fantasy. Consent sometimes is some kind of like bourgeois fantasy too. That's not the world I live in. People are down low. People cannot come out for many different reasons, and I'm not blaming them for those things. You need to work with where people are at, honestly, and it's not about you. So, next slide. Yeah, and these are some of the places that I've been. AIDS United, that's a great ChemSex workshop. AIDS Foundation, San Francisco AIDS. I know Tucker.org is a great website that people should check in terms of like harm reduction around this stuff and what are people's experiences of it. I'm not a person that is worried about HIV surveillance. I'm worried about Black queer people that are crypto mad and fat and femme, and their experiences of the world, make sure that they are getting all that they want out of their lives. That's what my concern is. And that they have a job, they got a house, and they're having good sex. So those are the good place. That's where I want people to be at, honestly. So that's really all I got out here, and I can answer any questions. I think I'm a positive person, HIV positive person. So people, and it happened recently. So I happened, I'm just trying to be available to people to like talk about, like, we're wondering like what's happening now for like drug use. People will talk to people that are HIV positive from like 2007 or something, for people that used to use drugs, and like, but like where are people that are using drugs now? Like, what are their strategies for life? Is the question that I have. Thanks.
Thank you. Yeah, if anyone has any questions, please feel free to unmute yourself, or if you can't unmute yourself, just type it in the chat. Honestly, one thing that's really resonated with me is and it reminded me of a quote, and that is, love is the irresistible desire to be irresistibly desired. And access to pleasure and to be able to feel desired in your regular life is so important. It's just kind of, it's necessary. I don't know if anyone can get through life without some form of love, in some way, shape, or form. Yeah, and with the coming out, I will say I come out every time a woman hits on me. Like, it's not just the one-time thing. I'm constantly like, oh yes, by the way, I'm gay. Let me just sashay a little bit more, maybe make my voice a little higher. And yeah, not everyone has such gentle or really accepting experiences. So like things like some of the movies that are coming out, really trying to encourage young people to be themselves. But I'm like, Moonlight was a great example of how coming out is not necessarily the safest thing to do. And how when you have to do it multiple times throughout your life, it can be very exhausting. It can really change who you are and how you view and interact with the rest of the world and your community.
Yeah, I mean, I'm I think that this is a controversial view, but I kind of don't believe in coming out. I don't. I worked at the HRC in DC, and this, like, the white gay establishment is, I don't follow them. I don't care what they have to say. I am Black. We have our own like views of the world. We have our own ways of being around each other. Black people are queer as fuck, but they just aren't queer in the ways that like is acceptable to these white people generally. So that's just and that's the real conversation I want people to have, because it's something else, because they're like, you're being white, and like, nope, it's like black bodies are queer and kind of don't even go into the binary that is the white male and white female, so white woman, you know, so it's so I think that's where the conversation should be. And you know, maybe, you know, I don't know, those are just my views on that, because this whole thing where people think that being gay is white, it's just that's wrong. It's like based in like a Christianity that's based in white supremacy. um you know, I would look forward to having another conversation with some people around that thought, because that is what we really have to unravel, when it comes to our world, like the Black gay world, you know, because like if we also want to make sure that we aren't like doing download shit, and that's actually in like, you know, when it comes to like, I don't care about the HIV surveillance stuff, but like when you're doing it, you're doing you're like spreading things into the broader community because you can't like talk about like that yourself. I think it's a bad look, you know. And I do care about Black women, and like, don't, it's really shitty when you do end up getting, you know, syphilis. You know, syphilis is pretty bad too, honestly. Syphilis and HIV and Hep C from your partner that you didn't know was sleeping with, man. That sucks, and that's a real conversation too. So,
Yeah, I feel like that would be a great conversation to have specifically about Black queerness and how that's painted by the Black queer community versus how it's painted by the rest of the community. Um, okay, yeah, I'm gonna a little note about that. So expect the email in a couple weeks.
I don't know if there are any other questions, any other like just thoughts on chemsex generally would be good.
Hi, this is William. Thank you for
I
the conversation. This is a topic that I work with in Wake County and here in Raleigh, and we are seeing a lot of an influx of people using methamphetamines and testing positive for HIV. And that's something that we need to start a conversation, because in our community, I'm Latino, so it's a taboo also talking about the use of drugs and how can that affect you also. So thank you for the great presentation.
Yeah, is there did you say it was within like the new people were Latino, or are they Black, or are they both, or
So we are seeing an influx and Hispanic and Black. Um, and also it has to be with the lack of PrEP access. We see more of the white folks that they're on PrEP. So, and the Hispanic, there's a lot of people that they don't download also, that they don't use condoms, they don't believe in condoms. And I'm seeing more of a methamphetamine use that I haven't seen before in North Carolina. So I used to live in the West Coast, so the West Coast is more, they've been using it for so many years. Now it's hitting the East Coast, Atlanta, Texas, North Carolina. It's more accessible for people. So yeah, there's a lot of conversation around it. A lot of people getting arrested because of using methamphetamines. And harm reduction is a good way to help people also. All those tips that you provided on it, how to come down, how to do it safely, because a lot of people are going to continue using it. It's just giving them the option of being safe, not being robbed, because there's a lot of things that happens when you're doing chemsex. So thank you for bringing this great conversation, and I hope we can continue it in another occasion.
yeah, I yeah, I definitely hope it continues, because it's like people are can go the wrong way. They can lead to criminalization of new groups of people in your state or your city. instead of kind of just bringing the whole community together and say, yo, we have to really make sure if we're meeting at these places, which is kind of like it's kind of like thinking about the way COVID has, it's like it's kind of like connecting who is like, how did this happen, right? But in the surveillance way that does not include policing, does not include you acting like a cop. If they got out of the sex party, then you need to know, you need to have the trust to be able to say, well, okay, what was that sex party? Oh, and who else was at that? Oh, okay, well, let's make sure that that network of people has access to PrEP then. And that's so hard, because when, I will tell you, when the Philadelphia Department of Public Health called me, they came at me like all sideways. I was like, I'm not telling you shit. I went back and forth with them over time. Then they had a supervisor call me, and I was like, nah. It's like, where'd you get it? I'm like, I'm not telling you. Okay, and I just told them a random person, a place, and they wanted to know names and phone numbers of people. They're acting like a cop. And it's like, I know that some people are not good, but like these people are good. My friend down the street, my friends down the street that I fuck with that like me, like I don't want to have them calling them randomly, I want to call my this German daddy down the street that I fuck with, I'm not doing that. He's a good guy.
And there's also a stigma around chemsex. And a lot of people, they always think that this is something that only the LGBTQ, gay men do, but it's not. There's, so many people.
Yeah.
And that's something that I always tell my clients, be safe, because safety for me is first. When you're, someone is using, trying to reduce their harm and not, making them feel bad about their usage. And because that's not my role as a social worker, it's just trying to make them see that, if your use increase, you can, if it starts affecting your livelihood, you can lose your house, your job. So that's the things that I try to assist them and help them, not to lose themselves into it, that they are become homeless, especially.
Yeah, I mean, that's the way that you gain trust with people. I mean, I talk to my doctor, and I only like my doctor. I don't they have me talk to other people. I like Casey at Missouri Center. And you have to build individual trust. You don't have trust with organizations. I'm sure your people have trust with you as a person, and that sounds awesome.